He was a scrawny little man with dandruff on his head. He looked so thin you'd think he'd never been fed. He had a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth, and a face like the north end of a cow heading south. He had a nasty look in his beady little eyes, and with the dirt in his ears you could make mud pies. And yet if they caught him he would surely hang, for this weedy little man was the leader of the gang. His second was a man whom they called Big Jock. He had a body like a mountain and a head like a rock. He was a long way from being the most brilliant of the bunch, but he could end a man's life with a single punch. The brains of the gang was a slob called Ken. He was as bold as a baby, as chicken as a hen. He thought out the plans, but he was scared of cops, so he stayed at home eating lollipops. The others in the gang were a couple of runts. There was thin but thick Theodore, who spoke in grunts. Last of all there was dangerous Clive. He was the meanest of the gruesome five. He was quick with the gun and even quicker with the knife, and he placed no value on a human life, except for his own, which he held very dear. He was a violent man who knew very little fear. Well, they were resting in their hideout where they used to meet, when Sam stormed in and they jumped to their feet. With no time to relax, boys, so Ken, I would thank you to tell us about plans for the local bank. So Ken stood up with a nervous twitch and he said, this time, chaps, we're going to strike it rich. But Clive, don't do what you did the time before when you strangled the teller and threw him on the floor after slitting his throat. You know I abhor any type of violence or blood and gore. Clive gave a snarl and he said, shut up, or I'll grab you by the wrist and I'll give it a slap. Enough, you old Sam, Clive Ken is right. I saw you murdering a man the other night. You know quite well that one stab is all you need, but you give them 20 just to see them bleed. So Clive said, no one's going to give me cheek, and that goes for you, you little undersized freak. Now Jock was a tough man but loyal to his boss, so he gave Clive a punch like the kick of a horse. Thanks, Jock, that'll teach him to call me a freak. Another one like that and he'd sleep for a week. They lifted him up like a man half dead, and when the big day came he was still in bed. They said, Clive, we're afraid you'll have to stay back with Ken, although we're taking a risk using only 3 men. When they left, Clive sat up and he said, it's all your fault. You know how I'd like to have a crack at that vault. I feel a lot better now, in fact I feel fine, which is far from how you'll feel when I catch you, you swine. Ken watched Clive as he pulled the blankets back, and he knew in his heart that his future was black. When he saw Clive picking up a knife and his gun, he turned on his heels and he started to run. Clive looked in the closet, but he couldn't find Ken. In the garbage disposal in the closet again, he found him underneath his bed, lying on the floor. Ken had gone to sleep and he'd started to snore. So Clive grabbed his neck, which he tied a rope around, left him in the hideout, hanging 5 foot off the ground. He said, nobody's gonna get the better of me. And he headed for the bank to get the other 3. We change our scene to the bank where we can see they've killed the night watchman and are now quite free to break into the safe and take all the money out, when Clive comes upon them with a curse and a shout. He shot Big Jock and stabbed Theodore dead. Then he grabbed up an axe and chopped off Handsome Sam's head. He knelt down on his knees and started with the business of getting at the money, which would now be only his. He worked the combination out and opened up the door, but he didn't hear Big Jock come creeping up along the floor. For Clive had only wounded him. Jock hadn't lost his life. He crawled up to poor Theo and pulled out his blood-stained knife. grabbed up Clive and he said, "Look here, this is for Sam," and he sliced off an ear. "I guess you killed Ken, so here's one from his mother." And so with another swish he cut off the other. "You also killed Theo, so here's one more." And he cut through Clive's hand till the knife scraped the floor. "And these are for trying to get rid of me." He cut off Clive's feet in the front of his knee. Then he split poor Clive's throat and fled with the cash, letting Clive die in agony, mangled and mashed. As he ran to the border, this thought came to Jock: at the bank in the morning they will get a shock.